Hi, my name is Jake Szufnarowski. I live in New York City. I moved there in 1994, and not long after I moved there, I had my first interaction with Larry. It started with the Village Voice, with an ad for a part-time office assistant. So it said it was at 161 Hudson Street. And I had looked in the Village Voice and it said it was for a nightclub. So I put two and two together. I realized it was Wetlands. I went down there, put on my best pair of slacks, which happened to be my only pair of slacks at the time, my sneakers that were the least scuffed, my one shirt that had a collar on it, because I thought that type of thing would make a difference, when you were applying for a job. Didn't realize I was really applying for a new life. I went down to Wetlands and I rang the buzzer on the side door, and a voice answered, and come to know today that voice was Larry. And I said, I'm here for a drop off a job application. And then the voice snapped back, we're not taking personal appearances. Go back and fax your resume. Shit, I don't think I want to work here. I went back and sent my resume anyway. I went down and met him. And unlike a lot of the people he hired, I didn't know what Jerry Garcia's birthday was. But I had been to 3 Grateful Dead concerts. The first 2 of them were for the drugs. And then the third one was to put up with the music in order to get more drugs. But in my time at Wetlands, I really learned to appreciate that band. And Larry was a big part in that. And it's come to be he was a very meaningful person. He turned me on to a lot of things that I never thought I'd like. One of which is language. Larry definitely had a art for language. He's the first person who I ever heard to tell me something that I've heard many times since then. He asked me to do something one day. And I said, okay, I'll try. And he said, there is no try, Jake. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. I was like, oh shit, again, what have I gotten myself into? And then he asked me to come here and speak today at his funeral, and I thought to myself, well, I don't know how I can encapsulate Larry's essence in a short speech, but, if you're listening, Larry, I just want to let you know, I'm going to try. One thing about Larry was, Larry wasn't always right, but he was never in doubt. Obviously, that's something we can all agree on. One of the things Larry taught me that I think was super important and seems to get lost is people remember Wetlands as a place where you would go see amazing bands and see amazing live music, and where you would learn about activism. But the one thing he taught me that I've taken on in my career as a concert promoter, which he really started for me without me even knowing it. But he taught me that the band is basically the least important part of going out to see a concert and to have a live music experience. Sure, everybody says, oh, the Wetlands was great because, Fish was there and Spin Doctors and Mo and all these other bands. But the way Larry felt about that was that you knew you were going to see the band, but what you didn't know you were going for was a friendly security staff, a friendly face at the front door, bathrooms that had perfect mix of the music of the band that was playing, and DJ sets that were just important in the night as the music was, a sense of community, and a place that was just warm and welcoming as an environment. And those are the things that I've taken to heart, as a concert promoter in my life. And I know Peter Shapiro, who's here, who took over the club from Larry, really shared that and has also taken it forward. And Larry was also, he was a DJ, as you guys know. He had his own radio show, but he DJ'd at the club. And Larry was unlike any other DJ I've ever experienced before in my life, in that most DJs will come with a crate of records and they'll say, hey, we're going to play off the crowd. I'm going to play this song, and if it gets this vibe, we're going to move in this direction. We're going to give the crowd what they wanted. I don't think Larry ever did that in one of his DJ sets. Larry gave the crowd what he wanted and then made them want more of what he wanted. It was such that way. I don't know if people know this, but Larry would plan his DJ sets out meticulously. He would know exactly what song was going to be played at every moment in the night. I remember, doors would open. We used to do shows with The Machine, the Pink Floyd tribute band, which was one of his favorite shows to DJ because he could play all of his psychedelic music. And he would write out his entire set list to the minute, how long each song was. And we'd open doors at 8 o'clock, and the band wouldn't really take the stage until about 10 on a Saturday night. And it used to break my heart because I would watch him plan these songs out, and he used to send me around the city. This was in the early and mid-90s, to buy these records that he knew he had to have. And this was before the internet really broke and before you could listen to and sample music. And he would find the most obscure band. He'd say, Jake, there's this Italian psychedelic band that only put out one album called Goblin. And there's a song called Roller Coaster that's going to be so perfect at about 11:15 a Saturday night 3 weeks from now. He's like, you got to go find this album. Hey, where the fuck am I going to find this album, you know? You'd go around to every record store in town, and after a while, the guys got to know me. I'd be like, hey, I'm looking for... And they'd just shake their head and be like, well, of course we don't have that. But somehow, magically, I'd always find it, because in those days, New York City was the one place you could always find what you were looking for if you were willing to put enough effort in. And Larry sure made me put a lot of effort in. But he would put these DJ sets together, and he would do it so far in advance, and the thing that would break my heart was knowing how much thought he put into it. But he would insist on opening the doors at 8 o'clock. Nobody would be anywhere near the club before about 9:15 on a Saturday night. And I'd just watch him play this music for nobody, for just the bartenders sitting around, and like, when are the tips going to start rolling in, you know? But then everything would kick into gear finally, and it would be people would come in a few minutes before the machine would play, or whoever the band would be, and then they'd play their set, and then, Larry would have his music pre-picked out again, and it would always get the crowd dancing. No matter what kind of mood they were in when they got there, Larry was able to turn their mood into what he wanted, get them to feel and experience things together in a way that he picked out, which was really, I think, part of his biggest legacy as a concert promoter. It wasn't just booking the right bands, it was giving people this phenomenal, extraordinary experience, which, you could pretty much only get at Wetlands. And I've been to nightclubs all over the world, and haven't seen anything like Wetlands since the time it closed. Another thing I wanted to bring up was his storytelling. If you spent any time around Larry, you know that he loved telling stories. One story we heard, I bet a bunch of you have heard, I had asked him to tell it to Peter the last time we saw him a couple of weeks ago. It was a story about when Larry was just after high school, he went to London, and he ended up breaking into Heathrow Airport and boarding a plane that he didn't have a ticket for. If you know Larry's fear of flying, that makes the story extra phenomenal. But the thing that struck me about the story was Larry wasn't, he wasn't full of physical energy the last time we saw him. But when he started recounting that story, it's like his whole body sat upright. He had fire in his eyes and passion, and he was remembering every tiny little detail of that story, which had been, I guess it was 42 years ago. But he remembered how many security guards there were at his little lookout points. He remembered how high the fence was. He remembered the color of the milk crates that he had to stack up to climb on that fence to jump down on the tarmac. He was a very detail-oriented man. There was very little that escaped him. And it was truly energizing to see his passion for his stories at that time. One story I have that I remember really well is a story I like to tell about Larry and his attention to detail. One night I was working in the cashier booth, and Larry came down for a show, and it was about 11:30 p.m., which was like peak time on a Saturday night. He said, Jake, how many people are in the club right now? And I said, I don't know, 450 or so. We had the very scientific method of figuring out how many people were inside by looking at how much money was in the cash box. Well, I said about 450. And he said, okay. And he walked inside, and he came back out less than 5 minutes later. He said, Jake, there's obviously 580 people in here. What's wrong with the count? Did you not count the money? I said, how do you know there's 580 people in here? He said, Jake, I know. I've been in this room enough times. I know there's 580 people in here. I was like, there's no way. There's 580 people in there. I've been sitting here all night. I've been taking their money. This is how much money we have. He said, you want to make a bet? How much you want to bet? I'll bet you $100 right now there's 580 people in here. I was like, all right, fine, I'll take that bet. He said, get that clicker. Security guard had a little clicker. You click once, and it turns the numbers. He said, go through the club right now. I'm going to stand at this front door. I'm not letting anyone in or out of this club until you count every person. So I went through the club. People thought I was crazy, but I made it through the whole club, went all the way downstairs, all the way back up. I actually stood outside the women's room for a few minutes to see how many people would come out. True story. I finished the clicker. It was 582 people in the clicker. I mean, that's truly a story of a man who doesn't let any detail pass by him. And, Larry always knew what band was right to play in the room, too. How many people they'd bring into the room and how to make it feel full. It's interesting that this room is full without being overpacked. If I had a clicker here right now, I'd probably say there's about 100, 110 people in the room right now. And I know Larry would probably say I'm just about right, but I know he'd also feel that there's a love of millions, millions of people. Thank you.